The museum's Egyptian exhibit had always been the crown jewel of the collection, but as curator Ella Thompson soon discovered, it also held a very unwelcome surprise. Late one night, while she was finishing up paperwork, a strange rumbling echoed through the dimly lit halls. The artifact lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the ancient sarcophagi. Ella's curiosity led her to investigate, and as she approached the display of a particularly ornate mummy, she noticed something peculiar, a faint, greenish glow emanating from within the sarcophagus. Before she could react, the lid slid open with a screech, revealing a very annoyed mummy who had clearly woken up on the wrong side of eternity. Wrapped in tattered linen and wielding a rusty scimitar, the ancient figure seemed less like a fearsome undead warrior and more like a disgruntled employee late for a very important meeting. The mummy, grumbling about millennia of bad service, proceeded to cause chaos in the museum, unravelling itself and the exhibits with every misstep. Ella, now in a frantic race to prevent a full-blown catastrophe, enlisted the help of a bumbling night security guard and a historian with an encyclopedic but outdated knowledge of ancient curses. Their attempts to appease the irate mummy only lead to more slapstick mishaps, misfired fire extinguishers, toppled statues, and a hilarious chase through the museum's labyrinth corridors. Amidst the chaos, Ella discovers that the mummy's complaints stem from a long-forgotten administrative error, an unpaid salary that had accrued interest over thousands of years. As they scramble to resolve the ancient bureaucratic blunder, the team must navigate both the mummy's demands and their own escalating comedic calamities, all while ensuring the rest of the museum remains intact. In the end, it's a race against time to restore order and convince the mummy that it's not just the modern world that's gone mad sometimes, even the afterlife has its off days. Ella's frantic attempts to calm the mummy only seem to escalate the chaos. The security guard, Dave, who had always been more adept at snoozing than saving the day, was now running through the halls, clutching a broken flashlight like a weapon. "I swear, if that thing touches the coffee machine, I'm going to lose it," he shouted, tripping over a display case and nearly knocking over a replica of King Tut's golden mask. Meanwhile, Dr. Lydia Hartman, the historian, was frantically leafing through dusty tomes in the library's back room, searching for any mention of ancient grievances. "This is exactly why I stopped reading ancient scrolls for pleasure," she muttered, her glasses slipping down her nose as she scanned through pages of hieroglyphics. Why does every curse come with bureaucratic red tape? The mummy, named Ankhset by an old inscription, was not just annoyed but profoundly indignant. He stumbled through the museum's marble floors, his wrappings unravelling and snagging on priceless artefacts. "In my day," he grumbled, "we had proper pyramids, not these flimsy display cases." He managed to swipe at an exhibit's protective glass, sending a cascade of ancient relics crashing to the ground. The sound of smashing pottery and clattering statues was only matched by Ankhset's loud exclamations about the horrid state of modern preservation. Ella, trying to salvage what she could, decided to engage Ankhset directly. She approached him with a mix of bravery and desperation. "Look, Ankhset, if we can get you your compensation, can we please avoid any more damage?" she pleaded. "I promise we'll get everything sorted." The mummy, pausing to consider this, looked less menacing and more exasperated. "Compensation," he said, his voice softening. "You mean to tell me that after all these years my grievance is still unresolved?" Dave, finally managing to catch up with the others, burst in breathlessly. "I found the coffee machine. But the mummy's trying to use it as a time machine or something." Ankhset, now with a slightly less furious demeanour, inspected the coffee machine. "This contraption is supposed to brew a beverage?" he asked, clearly baffled. Ella took the opportunity to use a little charm. "Yes, and it's quite the modern luxury. How about we make a deal? We'll get your back pay processed, and you can enjoy some fresh coffee." Ankhset seemed intrigued but not entirely convinced. "Very well. But I expect interest for all the time I've lost. And I want a decent cup of coffee, not this." He sniffed at the brew black, bitter concoction. As Ella, Dave and Lydia managed to appease the disgruntled mummy with a blend of bureaucracy and coffee, the museum slowly returned to normal. The team realized that while they had managed to solve the immediate crisis, they had also made a new friend in Ankhset, who was more than willing to provide a historical perspective on ancient Egyptian culture in exchange for a steady supply of decent coffee. In the end, the museum's reputation was saved, albeit with a few more coffee stains on its once pristine walls. Ankhset, now satisfied and caffeinated, was content to return to his sarcophagus, albeit with a much lighter heart and a promise to return for a more formal visit without the unruly disruptions. As for Ella and her team, they were left with a memorable tale of mishaps and mummy antics that would surely become the stuff of museum legend. The aftermath of Ankhset's chaotic visit left the museum in disarray. As Ella, Dave, and Lydia worked through the night to restore order, an uneasy silence fell over the once bustling hallways. The flickering lights cast long shadows, and a cold draught seemed to creep through every corner. Little did they know, their troubles were far from over. The next evening, as Ella was alone in her office sorting through a mountain of paperwork, a series of unexplained occurrences began. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, causing her breath to fog in the air. The lights dimmed to a near blackout, and then the faint sound of scraping metal echoed through the walls. Ella's heart raced as she approached the ancient sarcophagus that had caused so much trouble. As she inspected it, she noticed something horrifying. The mummy's wrappings had been disturbed again, and an unsettling, dry scent of old tombs permeated the room. Meanwhile, Dave, still shaken from the previous night's events, had reluctantly returned to his security rounds. As he walked past the Egyptian exhibit, he heard whispering voices. His flashlight beam flickered, revealing fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures darting between the display cases. Great, Dave muttered to himself, just what we need, ghosts on top of everything else. The whispers grew louder, forming a dissonant chorus of ancient curses and anguished cries. Dave's flashlight finally died, plunging him into darkness. A chilling touch grazed his arm, sending him stumbling backward into a display of ancient weaponry. Lydia, still researching in the library, noticed that several of the old scrolls had been mysteriously rearranged. A sinister energy seemed to linger in the air. The ground beneath her shook, as though in a minor quake, causing books to tumble off the shelves. She pulled out an old tome detailing Egyptian necromancy, hoping to find some clues about the strange occurrences. The text described dark rituals and restless spirits bound by curses, suggesting that Ankhset's disturbance might have awakened something far worse than an irate mummy. As the night deepened, a soft, eerie glow began to emanate from the sarcophagus in the Egyptian exhibit. Ella, Dave, and Lydia reconvened, their faces drawn with fatigue and fear. They approached the exhibit with trepidation. The sarcophagus lid was slowly sliding open, though there was no visible force moving it. From within, a dark mist began to seep out, swirling around them with malevolent intent. "Is this part of some curse?" Ella whispered, her voice trembling. Before Lydia could respond, a deafening roar filled the museum. Shadows coalesced into grotesque, spectral forms, ancient Egyptian spirits, awakened by the mummy's unrest. They drifted through the museum, their mournful wails blending with the groaning of the building itself. The spectral figures seemed to possess a malevolent intelligence, targeting the trio with unnerving precision. Dave, ever the skeptic, tried to confront the spirits with his flashlight, but it was useless against their ethereal forms. "I knew this job was going to be hard, but this is ridiculous," he shouted, trying to fend off the spirits with wild swings of his flashlight. The spirits were drawn to Lydia's book, as if sensing its connection to the ancient rituals. "We need to get rid of the book," Lydia cried. "It's a focus for the spirits." The team scrambled to get rid of the tome, but as they did, the spirits grew more agitated, their screams piercing through the museum's walls. The very fabric of reality seemed to thin, making it difficult to distinguish between the living and the spectral. Ella had a desperate idea. She recalled an old ritual she had read about in her own research, a protective incantation that might send the spirits back to their realm. The trio gathered their resolve and performed the ritual, chanting words that seemed to resonate with the very walls of the museum. As they spoke, the spirits began to wail and recoil, their forms dissipating into the dark mist that fled back into the sarcophagus. The energy in the museum shifted, and a profound silence fell over the space. Exhausted and shaken, the team looked around at the damage. The museum was a mess, but the spectral threat had been vanquished. Ankhset's sarcophagus was once again sealed, and the spirits seemed to have retreated into the safety of their own ancient prison. The next morning, as the sun rose, Ella, Dave and Lydia stood among the wreckage, knowing that their experience would forever change their perception of the museum. Though they had survived the night's horrors, they understood that the secrets of the past were not always meant to be disturbed, and the old tombs held more than just relics. They harbored restless spirits and ancient curses, waiting for the chance to be set free.